Paste. Did you know there was... It was, Okay. I've just made a big mistake. And I could give up and just walk away. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use this mistake as an opportunity to give you a better speech. In fact, that's what I'll talk about today. Mistakes that can be great. Dale Carnegie once said, "The successful man will profit from his mistakes and try again in a different way." So today, let's look at some of those historical mistakes that were profitable and the men who didn't give up. The Leaning Tower of Pisa. It is such an obvious mistake, and yet it is still known and loved throughout the world. It began in 1174 in Pisa, Italy. Bernardo Pisano, an Italian architect, was commissioned to build a 185-foot bell tower for a cathedral. Construction began and went smoothly for the first 3 stories. But then, all of a sudden, it began to lean. Pisano tried to do everything he could to offset the lean, but it was no use, because the ground was too soft underneath it. So Pisano gave up. About 100 years went by before construction resumed. This time, it was built out of line, and concrete was pumped around it. Of course, this didn't work either. In fact, the tilt of the tower increased 1/4 of an inch every year. Charlotte Fultz Jones, author of Mistakes That Worked, said they fear someday their tower will lean too far and become the toppled Tower of Pisa. Recently, however, a group of specialists finally found a way to stop the lean. In 1990, they closed the tower and slowly removed soil from the north side of its foundation. This decreased the lean by about 20 inches. They then reopened the tower in 2001 and say it should be safe from collapse for the next 300 years. Who would have thought that the mistake of the Leaning Tower of Pisa would make it one of the most famous structures in the world? Do you know what happens when you leave a piece of bread or meat out for a while? That's right! Mold! Well, unfortunately, or rather, fortunately, Alexander Fleming didn't. In 1928, Alexander Fleming, a bacteriologist, was looking for a way to kill some deadly bacteria. So one morning in September, he placed a plate containing the Staphylococci bacteria next to an open window and left it there. Later, when he went to check on it, he discovered that some mold spores had blown in and ruined the bacteria. Now, most people would have thrown away this spoiled experiment, but Fleming persisted. He examined it under his microscope, and to his surprise, found that the mold was growing on the Staphylococci. He also noticed that there was a clear zone around the mold. This meant that the mold was actually dissolving the deadly Staphylococci bacteria. One of the greatest advances in medicine, penicillin, was born. As a result, millions of people are alive today that wouldn't have been if Alexander Fleming hadn't made a mistake. I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. I'd like to buy the world a Coke and keep it company. It's the real thing. It was also a mistake. In 1886, John Pemberton, a pharmacist, was busily working in his backyard. He was making a medicine that could relieve exhaustion, aid the nervous system, and soothe headaches. So in an open fire in his brass kettle, he mixed up a concoction and stirred it with a bowdor. Don't ask me why. He then took his new medicine to Jacob's pharmacy and instructed his assistant, Venable, to add water to the syrup and then chill it with ice. As Venable tried to make some, however, he mistakenly added carbonated water instead of regular water. They both tried it and found it tasted great! This got them very excited. All at once, they had the idea of serving it as a beverage instead of a type of medicine. Pemberton named it Coca-Cola from the coca leaves and cola nuts it had in it. During that first year, John Pemberton sold 25 gallons of the Coca-Cola syrup. And so while everyone was having a coconut smile, so was John Pemberton, all the way to the bank. Doesn't this bring back horrid childhood memories? You were always told it saved so many people. But as you sat there, with the nurse standing over you, all you could really think of was, ah! Well, the person who mistakenly invented this was not at all thinking of people. In fact, he was trying to save a bunch of chickens. In 1880, there was a huge chicken disease in France called chicken cholera. Louis Pasteur, one of the most brilliant chemists of the 19th century, tried to help the French chicken industry cure this devastating disease. In chicken cholera, the chickens would stagger around, flutter their wings, collapse, and die. One day, Pasteur grew the microorganisms, or germs, that caused the disease, and stored it away in bottles. After a while, he fed them to a group of chickens, expecting them to die. But all they did was get sick for a while, and then they got better. Because the germs had been growing for about 6 weeks, Pasteur thought they'd become a little stale. So he got a fresh crop of germs and fed it to the same group of chickens. Only this time, nothing happened. So he fed them to a different group of chickens, and these chickens all got sick and died. By accidentally leaving the germs out till they got old, Pasteur realized that they had become weakened and could no longer cause a serious disease. In fact, they actually protected the chickens from ever having it. It was at this point Pasteur discovered this could work on humans too. By injecting weakened germs into the body would build up an immunity to the disease. This process later became known as the vaccination. So the next time you're staring at that needle, think the chickens. Oh, and Louis Pasteur. How do you remind someone to stop over the grocery store? How do you remind yourself to call the doctors to make an appointment? How do debaters debate? Notes, aren't they great? And, oh yeah, they were a mistake too. In 1970, a man named Spencer Silver, who worked at the 3M research laboratories, was trying to make a super adhesive. During its development, however, something went horribly wrong. For instead of being super strong, the test product was super weak. Silver didn't know what to do with this stuff, so he put it away. 4 years later, another 3M scientist, Arthur Fry, was singing hymns in his church choir one Sunday morning, but had one problem. The bookmark he was using kept falling out. Frustrated and distracted, he suddenly remembered soda's adhesive. Monday morning, he returned to his lab and coated some of his bookmarks with the failed adhesive. And voila! It was just sticky enough to stay in one place, and yet lifted off with no trouble at all. By 1980, 3M was selling Post-it notes nationwide. I hope that this presentation has inspired you to turn all of your mistakes into great opportunities too. Thomas Edison once said, "Many of life's failures are people who did not realize that they were close to success when they gave up." And he should know. Thomas Edison tried and failed to make the light bulb 10,000 times. And when asked about all of his failures, he simply replied, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Thomas Edison never gave up. He turned all of his mistakes into an opportunity for success until one